Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Prasannatma Prabhuji, Dandavat pranams.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat pranams to you too.
Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat pranams to all. We welcome all of you for the today's morning program, Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya. And today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Prasannatma Balaram Prabhu, and he will enlighten us on Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 31st chapter, verses 8 and 9. Over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. So, Hare Krishna to all the devotees. At the outset, I'd like to thank the Nityam Bhagavata Seva team for giving me this opportunity to do the small seva. So, on that note, we will get started. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye Ashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Maham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. I hope my audio and video, everything is all right. You're able to hear?
Yes,
thank you so much. Just trying to share the verse. Just a minute. Yeah, Hare Krishna. So today we are looking at two verses from the 4th canto, 31st chapter, verse 8 and 9. So this is the conversation between the Prachetas and sage Narada. Maitreyo vacha iti prachete samprushtho Bhagavan Narado munihi Bhagavati Uttama Shloka Avishtatma Bhavin Nripan. Maitreyo Vacha. So here Maitreyo is saying, the synonyms are like this. Maitreyo Vacha, Maitreya said, Iti, thus, Prachete Sam, by the Prachetas, Pushtaha, being asked, Bhagavan, the great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Naradaha, Narada, Munihi, very thoughtful, Bhagavati, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Uttama Shloke, possessing excellent renown, Avishtha, absorbed, Atma, whose mind, Abhavit, replied, Nripan, to the kings. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The translation, the great sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, being thus petitioned by the Prachetas, the supreme devotee Narada, who is always absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, began to reply. In this verse, Bhagavan Narada indicates that Narada is always absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Avistatma. Narada has no other business than thinking of Krishna, talking of Krishna, and preaching about Krishna. Therefore, he is sometimes called Bhagavan. Bhagavan means one who possesses all opulences. When a person possesses Bhagavan within his heart, he is also sometimes called Bhagavan. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura said, Sakshat Daritvena Samasta Shastrai. In every Shastra, the spiritual master is accepted directly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This does not mean that the spiritual master or a saintly person like Narada has actually become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he is accepted in this way because he possesses the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart constantly. As described here, Avisthatma, when one is simply absorbed in the thought of Krishna, one is also called Bhagavan. Bhagavan possesses all opulence. If one possesses Bhagavan within his heart always, he does not automatically possess all opulence also. Does he not automatically possess all opulence also? Which means that yes, he possesses all the opulence. In that sense, a great devotee like Narada can be called, can be called Bhagavan. However, we cannot tolerate when a rascal or impostor is called Bhagavan. One must possess either all opulences or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, who possesses all opulences. So this was the 8th verse. I also read out the 9th verse. Verse 9. So after this, then Narada is speaking. Narada uvacha Janmatani karmani tad ayus tanmano vachaha narnam yena hi vishwatma sevyate harir ishvaraha. So what does that mean? Here in the translation we can see the great sage Narada said, when a living entity is born to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller, his birth, all his fruitive activities, his lifespan, his mind, and his words are all factually perfect. So I'll not read the purport for this. We'll take it up as we move on. All right, Hare Krishna once again to all the devotees. Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakturunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamahyam Dati Swapadantikam Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschayata Deshatatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'm just seeking the mercy of all the devotees who are here, all the senior Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So kindly bless me so that I'll be able to do some justice to these two verses, very wonderful verses. And I'm doing this as a service to the Guru Parampara, and for the pleasure of the Lordships, as well as for my own purification. So, verse number 8, Iti prachetasam prishto Bhagavan Narado Munihi Bhagavati Utama Shloka Avisthatma Bhavin Rupan. So, which means that the great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, being thus petitioned by the Prachetas, the supreme devotee Narada, who is always absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, began to speak. So here, Prachetas are actually asking. So sage Narada comes, and then the Prachetas are paying obeisances to the great personality, and then they are asking sage Narada to advise them, to speak to them. So that is the background, and this is after they had the darshan of the Lord. And then after they did so much of tapasya and sadhana and all that, and then after that, then this conversation is taking place. So by this, we can understand the mood of the Prachetas about how they are actually honoring not only the Lord, but also the devotees of the Lord. Because we know Narada is a wonderful devotee of the Lord. And then an interesting thing here, that the key word is actually Bhagavan Narada. So that's the key word for today's discussion. So, which we will just see. If you look at the translation, how is Prabhupada translating this? He is saying Bhagavan as the great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Narada as Narada. So Bhagavan, we know what it means. I mean, it is Bhagavan means the personality of Godhead. But here, Prabhupada is translating it as the great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So somebody who is a devotee of the Lord, in this scenario, in this context, the reference is made that way. So that's one point which kind of brings in a whole lot of discussion in the purport that we can see. So what actually is being brought out here is the quality of Narada. So it is very briefly given here, because so we know that sage Narada is always absorbed in the thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in this case is also referred to as Uttama Shloka. So Narada has no business than thinking of Krishna, Prabhupada is saying. And then he is talking of Krishna. And then he is preaching about Krishna. He is serving Krishna by preaching. And hence, he is sometimes called as Bhagavan, because he is so much his association with Bhagavan is there that he is referred to as Bhagavan. So we know the meaning of Bhagavan is one who possesses all opulences, which means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We also know that he is Asama Urdhava. Our philosophy states very well that we should not compare somebody else as Bhagavan and address. So that becomes an aparad actually. But then in this particular verse, we see that a devotee of the Lord, that is Lord sage Narada, he is referred to as Bhagavan. So a living entity being referred to as Bhagavan is because they are empowered by the Lord. The Lord is empowering that living entity, and so sometimes they are referred to in that way. And that's the way one has to understand this particular anomaly, because we know, we have seen instances, or we've heard, we've been told that such references are an aparad, but then here we see that this reference is there. And it doesn't end with just sage Narad. If you look at Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many instances where such references have happened. Like in the Bhagavatam, Indra is also referred to as Bhagavan. Then we also know that Lord Shiva was referred to as Bhagavan. This was after the Daksha's Yagna got stopped, and then it was completely, it angered Lord Shiva, and then he went on a destruction spree. And then when he was being pacified by Lord Brahma, then he is referred to as Bhagavan. And in that purport, if you see, Srila Prabhupada again is bringing out the same aspect, that it is not that the Lord Shiva, or in this case, the sage Narada, has become equal in position to the Lord, but this is to glorify the Supreme in one sense, and also to raise the existing position of that particular individual. If you have to praise somebody, and then especially a pure devotee, not just anyone, a pure devotee of the Lord, then this type of a reference is made. Now, there is also a lot of justification on why this is there, because that particular pure devotee, he carries the Lord in his heart. He carries, and he knows the signs of Krishna consciousness. He is teaching Krishna consciousness to others, which means he is preaching. And then he is actually possessing all the opulences of the Lord. And then it's only Krishna which is there in his thoughts. So in speech, in thought, and then in body, means use of body or the senses. Everything is with respect to Krishna. Such an individual is being referred. In fact, if you look at other examples, Srila Prabhupada himself, we know, we refer to him as Srila Prabhupada. And what does Prabhupada actually means? It means the Supreme Lord. It is the feet of the Supreme Lord, or a part of the Lord. So a part of the Lord or the Lord, it is the same. So we are actually calling His Divine Grace as Prabhupada. So Prabhupada means then we are referring to him as the Supreme Lord, because Prabhupada or Divine Grace is a pure devotee of the Lord. And then he possesses Krishna in his heart. And then he has the same qualities of the Lord. So we know that the Lord is very magnanimous, very tolerant, and then he is very forgiving. And like this, some of these qualities of the Lord. Now, Srila Prabhupada actually has exhibited all these qualities. And he had so much of compassion for the living entities. And that is how then he took this arduous journey, so difficult journey at the age of 70. Then he goes to to another country, and then he sets it up because he is being told by his guru to do that. And he is doing this out of compassion. It is instructions of the guru on one side, but then for the thing to happen, just the instructions and then trying to do it means then it would be done in a very half-hearted way. So even though there is a lot of respect, then another essential quality of compassion is there, and that actually defines the quality of the service or the quality of that particular activity. We might do an activity because we've been told to do, but the quality of that activity will depend on our nature, on the type of compassion or the type of this thing that we have. It's that particular quality, the magnanimity that we have, which will make us carry out that particular activity with a lot of care, with a lot of detail, and that in the detail we can see the quality of an individual, and that we can see very nicely in Srila Prabhupada, because he was very accommodative. Every week we are hearing the pastimes or the leelas of Srila Prabhupada, which is being brought out so wonderfully in every week. And then there we can see how Prabhupada was so accommodating, and then so much of mercy, and then so forgiving he was, and then he's paradukhi, and then he never took credit for any of this. So he was always giving credit, and this giving credit is the audharya bhava. So he doesn't want anything for himself. So he just gives up everything to the others. And all this, where is it coming from? It's all coming from the Lord. So in this way, we can. I'm not going into specific examples. There are so many examples which will come to our minds when we are talking about these qualities of Srila Prabhupada. But now, at a very high level, we can understand how Srila Prabhupada carries the Lord with him, and because of that, the qualities of the Lord is also there in that devotee, in a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, and therefore the references are made sometimes which with respect to the name which is of the Lord himself. Like in Narada's case, he was referred to as Bhagavan Narada. There was a prefix. And then for his divine grace, we say his divine grace, Abhay Charanaravinda. There is AC Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. So there is a suffix which adds, which is referring to the Lord himself. So, and then in the purport, Prabhupada also is saying that we cannot use this word so loosely. We cannot keep calling everybody as Narayana or as the Bhagavan or as Bhagavan and so on and so forth. Especially the imposters. They should not be tolerated. So that's another point that Prabhupada is bringing out. He's cautioning us like how this word has to be understood correctly, number one, and then its usage has to be limited to a certain category of people only because they have the qualities of the Lord, and definitely not for imposters. And then there, I think there is one particular example where Prabhupada, we know many examples where Prabhupada comes across heavily, especially with people who are actually blaspheming the Lord in many ways. It may not be direct. This Mayavada philosophy or the followers of Mayavada, they actually blaspheme the Lord, but in a very indirect way, in a very subtle way. And that is something that Prabhupada never tolerated. In fact, there was one instance where the devotees of Srila Prabhupada actually had arranged a particular forum for discussion. And it so happened that there was another person in that particular forum. So Prabhupada was actually sharing the dais with another individual. And this individual happened to be a Mayavadi. So the disciples didn't know actually about so much about these intricacies. And then they thought that, okay, this is another saintly person, so we'll just have him also, something like that. So because of that, it was a mistake, but then that happened. And so and both were to speak, but when the other person was speaking, then Prabhupada was actually listening to what he was saying. He was actually speaking in Hindi, so many of them could not understand, something like that. But then Prabhupada was very keenly observing. And then maybe halfway or 10 or 15 minutes into the discussion, immediately Prabhupada actually interrupts this particular discussion. And then he actually says, stop. And then he tells his devotees to do kirtan. Then start kirtan. We don't want any more of this. So he comes down very heavily. And then in one sense, this particular speaker is rudely stopped, because Prabhupada later clarifies that he was actually talking about the Mayavad philosophy. He was thinking that he himself is a Lord, and then everybody can become Lord, and so on and so forth. We know the Mayavad philosophy and then how it manifests in different ways. So this particular talk was moving in that direction, and Prabhupada immediately put a stop to it, and then he kind of chastised that particular thing, and then he was also upset with the devotees beginning, and then later on, of course, he forgives them, and then it becomes a learning for all of them. But the point is that how Prabhupada did not tolerate it. So now we see on one hand, somebody is called as Bhagavan, and that reference is made in a very reverential way, whereas another person, the moment such a reference is being put into that person, means connecting himself to the Lord, then, and if it is done in a wrong way, then immediately it is chastised or it is not accepted. So now, how do we reconcile this? Like, who can be accepted, who can't be tolerated, or who are the real imposters? And then how to go about reconciling this fact that we are comparing a living entity to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there, Prabhupada is giving a wonderful an explanation, where Prabhupada is saying that a pure devotee or a guru is certainly not equal to God. They are like God, Prabhupada is clarifying. They can be representatives of God, but they are not actually God. So we have seen that, we have to see them as good as God, but they are not God. Because as they are bona fide representatives of God, so we'll have to give the same respect that we would give to God. So if God has come, or a representative of God has come, it is the same for a Vaishnava, for a practicing Vaishnava. He has to give the same respect that one would give God to a representative of God. And this can be understood very easily with material examples. So Prabhupada gives this example of a viceroy and a king. In the olden days, there were kings who ruled kingdoms, and they had to send some emissionary to a certain distant place as a representative of the king. And then he has to give a message or have a discussion or whatever. So you had these viceroys who were there. So the viceroy, when he visited another place outside the kingdom, then those people there kind of accord the same level of treatment, similar level to the king. And this is a protocol even today in modern governance that is happening, governments. There is this protocol that is followed where a representative is treated as a president and so on and so forth. So a state head, an ambassador especially of a particular country, so he is treated like the head of that particular state or the country from where the ambassador has come. So in this way, though these two, they are not equal, but then when there is any interaction or dealing, then it is in the same way as that, but the original, the king or the head of the state. So like this, when a pure devotee or the guru is to be treated in the same way as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though they are not equal. So give the same respect that is accorded to the head or to the king. So we saw that. So by honoring the representative, the person is actually honoring the king or the head. So through that particular representative, a message is being passed. Subtle message as well as a direct message. And of course, it's a material dealing. So maybe there is some reply that has to be given, which is there. So that's the dealing. And also the subtle dealing that becomes very important. How he was received. That speaks about how amicable that particular king or the other state head is with respect to this place from where this the emissary is being sent. So like this, to what extent we are able to treat a pure devotee, how we are able to honor the Guru or the pure devotee, that is actually indirectly honoring Krishna. And that's how we will have to see. So in fact, the Lord is so merciful that he is giving us a chance to honor him through the representative. So here, the Guru or any Vaishnava is a representation of Krishna. When he is honored, he is actually honored by Krishna. So the Lord himself has declared in another instance that the worship of his devotee is more effective than the worship of Lord directly. So even if you render direct service to me, something more higher than that is the worship of my devotee. Because of that, there is this phrase, Mad Bhakta Puja Abhyadika. There is Mad Bhakta Puja Abhyadika. That is in Srimad Bhagavatam 11, Canto 19th chapter, verse 21, where Krishna is saying that instead of me, the more it's better the higher form of worship is to worship my devotee than me directly. So this we can see actually how there are many instances in Srimad Bhagavatam where the Lord actually gives his devotee more credits for a certain activity. One of the examples that we can think of is Bhishma Dev. So we know that Bhishma Dev was lying on a bed of arrows, and then he was actually given a chance to pacify Yudhishthir Maharaj after the war was won. So we all know how actually Yudhishthir Maharaj is pacified by none other than the Supreme Personality himself. Lord Krishna actually tells him, because he was very morose after the battle of Kurukshetra, even though they had won it, because he saw all the sufferings and all that, and then he somehow thought it is because of me. I am the solely responsible for this destruction. He was taking all the blame. But then, and that is when Krishna actually tells him it's not you. And then there is another Bhagavad Gita that gets rendered in one way for Yudhishthir Maharaj. But then that remorselessness is not going away for Yudhishthir Maharaj, even though the Lord himself spoke. But then later on, similar message is passed on by Bhishma Dev, by the arrangement of Krishna, wherein Bhishma Dev is talking to Yudhishthir Maharaj, and then he becomes very clear. All the remorseness that was there is going away from his heart. So now, how did this happen? I mean, the Lord actually gave position or the credit for Bhishma Dev, and then he did not take it. And actually, if you look at those purports where Prabhupada is explaining that Krishna could have easily, I mean, if Krishna is speaking, it is quite natural that anybody would take it. And then, but then it did not happen, because he said, where in the purport it is very nicely said that Krishna, who is sitting in the heart of Yudhishthir, made sure that Yudhishthir Maharaj did not accept the words of Krishna, who was speaking to him from outside. So in that way, he did not do that, because he wanted to give that particular credit to Bhishma Dev. So when that situation happened, then the same Krishna who was in the heart of Yudhishthir Maharaj, he made him accept the words, taking it completely on, and then thereby transforming himself or coming out of the remorseness. And then also it is explained how Krishna in the heart of Bhishma Dev actually gives the strength and the intelligence to Bhishma Dev to speak out these things, so that Yudhishthir Maharaj becomes convinced. So here, this particular Leela, we can understand how Bhishma Dev was given the credit. I mean, this comes in the first canto in the 9th chapter, verse 25. I mean, around that, we can see this. And then, of course, there is another wonderful example in Ramayana, in the Sundara Kanda, we know how it is all about Hanuman and no one else. So Hanuman is actually given. He is the hero of the war and especially in Sundara Kanda, it is no one else. He was able to fly to Lanka, and then so many things he was given credit to. So, but then that is we can see the explanations how Lord Ram does not take any thing, even though he could have done it, but then he gives that credit to Hanuman. Likewise, even in Mahabharata war also, Krishna says, all these people are already dead, Arjuna. You just fight the war, you just shoot your arrows, and then you take the credit. So Krishna is just giving that credit to Arjuna, and then he is saying that you just do it. That's it. It's all done by me already. There is nothing more. You just take the credit by being present there and then shooting the arrows, and that's it. That's over. So like this, and then of course, even in this wonderful pastime of Ambarish Maharaj, where the Lord is giving so much of credit, he says, I cannot take back the Sudarshan Chakra, but then if Ambarish Maharaj forgives you, then only it will come back to me. So he is giving complete power to Ambarish Maharaj, his devotee, and make it look like as though the devotee is better than the Lord himself. In all these instances, it might look like that. Of course, when we understand through the Shastras, through the Parampara, then we will not conclude like that. We will realize another quality of the Lord. But then a person who is not hearing through this, if they hear it in a very like a story, then very easily they would come to a wrong conclusion that, oh, in this case, Hanuman is greater than Ram, or any of those things. How could Krishna do this? Why did he do that? In fact, those various thought processes that come in, whereby they end up actually undermining the position of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is the pitfall that we should be aware of, especially when we are looking at such verses. And Prabhupada is so wonderfully explained in that. Now, there is another instance where actually Lord Shiva is telling Mother Parvati. He says, of all kinds of worship of Vishnu is supreme, or it is the highest. And then, but greater than the worship of Vishnu is the worship of a devotee of Lord, or worship of anything that is in relationship with Vishnu. So there is a greater position given to the worship of a devotee of the Lord rather than the direct worship of the Lord. So this is the Audharya Bhav that is coming out, and then that we can see in these shlokas also when reference is being made to an individual as Bhagavan. If you look at our even the aspect of Mahaprasad and Prasad, so because if it is offered to the Lord, it is just Prasad, but then once it is accepted by pure devotee, by the Guru, then it becomes Mahaprasad. Then there is also instances where such a thing did not happen. Like if you take the example of King Daksha, he did not accept the devotee in that way, and thereby he was not able to honor them, or he ended up ignoring them. He committed a blunder to them. Thereby, he was not successful in what he set out to do, where he wanted to do the yajna, but that did not happen, and everything got vanquished. Later on, with proper understanding and realization, then he was able to do it. So when one is puffed up, then there is no respect. So when there is disrespect that is there to a devotee, then it is actually a disrespect to the Lord himself. In fact, they say the Lord can tolerate some disrespect to himself, but if a devotee of the Lord is disrespected, the Lord gets more upset than the devotee himself. Whereas the devotee is not worried about it, but then he is forgiving. But then the Lord is. So in one sense, the devotee becomes even more forgiving than the Lord himself, because the Lord is not forgiving, but then the devotee of the Lord is forgiving. So a nice case of in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So we see Jagai and Madai, how they were treated, where the Lord wanted to kill them, but then Nityananda Prabhu and they stop him, and then they say, please don't do that. And then they were more forgiving, even though they were actually aggrieved, means the aparad, or they were hit and all that with the pot. So they had every right for that, but then they were more forgiving. So in this way, there's this constant one-upmanship between the devotee and the Lord in a very positive way, and each one is trying to outdo the other. So if you look at how accepting the seva, when we look at it from the Guru's perspective, like Prabhupada's, if you hear the past times of Prabhupada, we can understand how the Guru is accepting this particular seva. So he says that the Guru actually accepts the seva on behalf of the Lord. It is not that I am being served, so I feel happy about it. It is that I am being served because I represent the Lord. And then this service that is coming to me is actually, I'm accepting it on behalf of the Lord. So that's the mood. And there's this famous example of, I think, how he was being moved around in a very expensive car, probably a Rolls Royce or something, where a particular mention was made that, how is it that you accept all this and you say you're a renounced person and all that? Then he says that I am representing Krishna, and these devotees actually want to serve Krishna. So for Krishna, this car is nothing. It is just a metal box, nothing more. It should have been, in fact, a golden vehicle should be there for Krishna. That is more befitting Krishna. So, but then it's not there, so we are accepting this. So in this way, Prabhupada actually was so clear about this concept, and then he was fearless. In fact, yesterday's class we saw about how devotee is not fearful. So he fearlessly used to explain, and then the thing, it is not that he is very egoistic or anything, but then he is explaining it fearlessly, and he says, why not? It could have been even better. Not just a Rolls, which is just a metal box on wheels, but it should have been gold, because it is actually to Krishna and it's not to me that they are doing. So in the Shastras, this particular aspect of referring to somebody as a Lord is called as Ati Shruti. So Ati Shruti means exaggeration, but in a positive way. And this Ati Shruti is where we sometimes end up calling somebody as this thing, but we have to be very careful not to make an aparad of calling an unqualified or a non-devotee referring to that individual as Narayana or as Bhagavan. So, but then if he is a rascal, then it has to be condemned. And then this also ties up with that Vaishnava etiquette. So we know, we've been heard how when, let's say, we are doing Mangalarati or Arati to the Lord, and then some Vaishnava comes in, then it says that it is okay to stop the Arati or the Puja and then welcome that person and then continue with it. So thereby actually that pleases the Lord more. So we are actually acknowledging the presence of Vaishnava, and then he's made to sit or just a welcome and then continue with it. So all this amounts to what? It's not like we have this philosophy where we say, oh no, I'm praying to the Lord, so no. You just wait. No, it's not like that. That is not proper etiquette. In fact, we know in another pastime where Lord Purandara has come at the doorstep, and then he says, I'm serving my parents, which is my primary duty, so you please wait. So like this, various rasas are there, and these rasas are all, it becomes so wonderful. It does not actually undermine the position of the Lord. It actually brings out the quality of the Lord. It actually glorifies the Lord, because we understand that they are all glorified, empowered by the Lord, and then they are able to actually, the aspect of Audharya Bhav becomes very this thing. See, even though nobody can be equal to the Lord because he is Asama Urdhava, but then he willingly gives credit to others. So to his devotees, that is. And then he is giving that credit and making them do that. That is the Audharya Bhav. That the same Bhava is there even in the devotees of the Lord, in the Guru Parampara. So you take any of them, we will see how they always used to attribute their success to their Guru, or in fact, they used to attribute it to the devotees themselves. So there are many instances where Prabhupada used to say, I have not done anything. It is you people who have executed it. And then he used to not take any credit. If at all any credit is there, it is just that I followed the instructions of my spiritual master. That's all. Nothing else is mine. So this way, we can see this aspect of Audharya also, which is there. And then the Lord is actually Uruk Tamangi. So he is a doer of Herculean task. And then the devotees of the Lord also are the same, because we see how devotees of the Lord like Srila Prabhupada or Vyasadeva or Narada, Sage Narada, Goswamis, Madhvacharya, anybody you take in the parampara, they all did such wonderful jobs. Vyasadeva, the amount of text that he produced, so it was all not something that can be done by an ordinary human being. There is empowerment, and because of which it happened. Srila Prabhupada's case also, it is the same thing, where there is so much that he was able to accomplish. So he is an Urukamangi in more ways, and that is because of the empowerment that has come from the Lord. And that's how the Acharyas are explaining it. So in this way, we can again reconfirm that we are not compromising the position of Krishna, but actually we are enhancing it, enhancing his quality, because the quality of Bhakta Adina or Vatsala, which is the mercy of the Lord himself. So he's so merciful that he says, okay, take the credit, I don't want it. So that's the Audharya Bhav. And then even in the morning we say, no, Sakshat Dharitvena Samasta Shastra. So the Guru is worshipped as God or equal to God, and he is as good as God. So the government agent is as good as the government. So this is how we have to see this. And when we look at it in this way, then what happens is the seed of bhakti or the shraddha, the faith, is put into our hearts. And thereby, when we pray, we'll have to pray saying that, please inspire me so that I can take the message correctly and evoke right emotions. So now if pray to the Lord, if you have to, let's say you have this particular seva of speaking to somebody, then pray to the Lord to give strength and intelligence so that he can empower you to speak the right words at the right time in the right spirit. And at the same time, pray that the person who's receiving it or hearing it, he or she is able to receive it in the proper way, in the way it has to be received. So in both cases, the Paramatma in the respective hearts has to bless those individuals so that there's a proper exchange or the knowledge transfer that happens. So thereby, we are taking away the credit from ourselves. Otherwise, what happens? We are so conditioned that we might end up, or we will end up taking credit if we see a positive change and so on and so forth. Or if we see a negative change, I'll say, oh, no, they are not worthy of it. It'll take some time for them and all that. So we become very judgmental, and then very quickly we jump to conclusions, which is again not right. And so this particular balance is very much needed. And for that, we saw this example of Bhishmadev, how the Lord it was in the heart of Bhishmadev guided, and in Yudhishthira Maharaj also, he made him receive it in a proper way. So thereby, we can understand how the mercy is always there. We many times we'll see people say, oh, give me mercy, so I want mercy, which is okay, which is fine to ask. But then at one level, if you're looking at what is this mercy, then we have to understand that this mercy is already there. It's not like it is not there, I don't have mercy, I'm not getting mercy. No, that's not a very proper understanding, because our philosophy is what? Our philosophy is the philosophy of rope in a well. So in fact, what does that mean? It says like the mercy is already there. You just have to hold on to the rope. I've already put the rope down. You'll have to hold on. So in this way, but then we are not able to understand that, because even Prabhupada said, when somebody said, Prabhupada, please save me, he says, I cannot save you. He says, I can give you a method by which you can save yourself. So our prayer to the Lord should be to give that intelligence so that we are able to identify the rope when it gets dangled down. But most of the time we are not able to identify it. We are blind to it. And we think, oh, it'll come. There is this past time where a person is stranded, there's a lot of flood, and then he's in his house, and then he's sitting on the roof, and then he's praying to the Lord, oh Lord, please save me. And then as soon as he finishes the prayer, he sees there is a boatman who's coming, and then some social worker is saying, come on, I'll take you. He says, no, I have prayed to the Lord, he will save me, you go on. And then again he's praying, then again somebody else is coming, but then again no. Like this, 2-3 times it happens, and then he kind of dies or something, and the story goes like that. But eventually then he goes to the Lord, and then he says, oh Lord, what is this? I prayed for you, you didn't help me. But then the Lord says, what are you saying? I sent the boat 3 times, but then you were not intelligent enough to hop onto it. You kept refusing it. So you thought something else is going to happen. So this is how the disconnect is there with us, by not realizing the mercy that is already there. Then we try to anchor for something which we think is a mercy. So that's another pitfall that we have to avoid, because Prabhupada very clearly says that I cannot save you, but I'll give you a method by which you can save yourself. So we already have the method. We have to just cling on. We have to pray so that he gives the intelligence so that we can recognize the rope, and also ask for the strength so that we hold on to that rope and not let go. So the strength in terms of faith, in terms of physical strength also, so that we don't let go of it. And that's the point. And then if you look at the next verse there again, it is talking about, the key word that we are talking about is Narnam. So, or it is, I'll just try to share that. 1 second. Okay, here in this verse, the key word is Narnam. So that means a human body. So that's the point that Narada is trying to say here. He says that when a living entity is born to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller, his birth, all his fruitive activities, his lifespan, his mind, and his words are all factually perfect. So everything becomes perfect by serving the Lord, and that is the message in this particular verse. So here actually we can see how the birth, human birth, is very rare. In the purport, Prabhupada says that actually a human birth is very rare, and then he is saying that real religion is perfection of human life. And then what is perfection of human life? That is to awaken our natural inherent love of Godhead. So now there are two things. We all know we need love of Godhead, but where do we look for the love of Godhead? It is actually inherent. It is within us, and it is natural. It's not that we have to endeavor too much. It happens, like how a woman, the moment after the birth of the child, the qualities of the mother surfaces, and then naturally she takes to child rearing and all that. It doesn't have to join a 6-month course or like that to get into that, because it is there inherent, and then it comes out naturally. So like that, love of Godhead is also natural, and it is inherent. You don't have to look for it outside. So awakening this is a process. What we need to do is we have to awaken it. It is sleeping. It is dead. It is dormant. It is covered. That is why this Cheto Darpana Marjanam is there. So we have to remove those layers. Thereby it gets exposed. And then the love of Godhead is exposed. Then we will do activities which will express that love for the Lord, and it becomes spontaneous and natural. So now before that, when it is covered, the degree of covering is also dealt with in the purport, which means that we know that there are different types of human beings. There are 400,000, 4 lakh species of human. So how is it there are so many of them? That is with respect to the character of these individuals or the personalities. There is so much. And why is that? That is because of the 3 modes of material nature, the 3 modes which are covering a living entity. The modes are Sattva, Rajo, and Tamo. In small variations of the quantities of Sattva Gun, Rajo Gun, Tamo Gun manifest as a certain type of personality. So thereby there are so many personalities, and thereby then there are 400,000 of them as per the Shastras, the combination of these. So in this now, that is why there is this aspect of Varanashrama that is there, because Chaturvarna Maya Shrishtam, Krishna says, I have this, because he knows that there are different personalities, he knows that there are different types of human being, and each one has to be given an opportunity based on their disposition, so that they will be able to come out of this material existence. And that's a whole, the underlying word is that they'll have to come out of this material existence. So for that, the Varnas and the Ashramas are there. So that is our Sanatan Dharma. It's all about Varnas and Ashramas. That is the bifurcations that are there based on the Gunas, the Guna Karma Vivagasa. And then there are also living entities who are beyond this Varna and Ashramas, beyond the Varnashrama. There are lower types of entities. In the Bhagavatam, you can see there is this people who are called as Andhra, Pulinda, Kirata, Puna, and then some of them are called as Swapacha or Chandala. These are human beings who are outside of all of this. Now, among the most advanced ones are the ones who are born into the Varnashrama system, and among those who are spiritually advanced, who are already in the Varnashrama, who are spiritually advanced, are called as Aryans. And among the Aryan, the one who's engaged in devotional service a lot is most successful in life. This is what Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport. So, Varnashrama was given, it was created so to give us a chance so that we can progress while also gratifying our senses. So, it was an arrangement which covered two things. One is progress for our own self to move away from birth, death, old age, and disease. And at the same time, since we already have a material body, there are cravings. So to get out, to gratify those and then come out of it. So Aryan actually is not a race. It is about being cultured and about being learned. So that's what Prabhupada says. And devotional service is actually pure devotional service we are talking about. That service which is in the nature of ahituki and apratihata, which is unmotivated and uninterrupted. It's the sign of a pure devotee. To what extent we are not having any motivation to do a particular seva, which is, and also not doing it in an uninterrupted way. It's not like, okay, one day I did, and after that, then many days it didn't happen. So it's not like that. It is uninterrupted, and then it is unmotivated. So, but today, Prabhupada says that there is no God consciousness with people because they're all mad after economic progress. So there's this concept of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. In that dharma is forgotten, and moksha is anyway, they are not wanting it. So it's only artha and kama, which is not a very correct situation because they are actually binding themselves more and more because they just want to earn money, that is artha, and then they want to gratify their senses. So it is binding. So these are not Aryans. Aryans are the ones who are actually in the tenet of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. They want some sense gratification, but then that is done through proper ways, by following the shastras, by seeing what is the injunction of the dharma, of the shastras and what is their dharma, and accordingly then they try to satisfy. So this is the samyama or the controlled sense gratification. That is the highlight of our Sanatana Dharma, and that is the key to moving towards progress in dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And this might take many, many births, and that's how the whole setup was made. And that is what is real religion, which is actually the religion which is being based on God consciousness, irrespective of what is our nature. It could be anything, but then God consciousness is there for everyone. The degree might vary. So if one becomes a devotee, then life is successful. This is what Narada Muni is saying. He's defining the success. He says, human success is when they become God conscious, or they take to devotional service, or they take to bhakti. Then only their life becomes successful. So, in fact, in the purport, Prabhupada says there are more details that comes in the subsequent verses. So that's why I'm not covering too much in detail here, because it's just the high level where we are seeing how this is about bhakti. That makes it successful. In fact, Prabhupada goes on and says that all our actions get justified if it is evoking bhakti. So now, there is this particular verse in Srimad Bhagavatam where there is a series of verses. So which we know, Savai Pumsa Paro Dharma. So in that, what is the translation? So it says the occupational activities of a man performs according to his own position are only, not that. By the supreme, it is verse 6. So by the supreme occupation or dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So this is what is the reference there. And then in fact, those series of shlokas are so wonderful. If you look at the next one, verse number 7, I'm not reading the verse in the interest of time, but by rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So by doing service, this is what happens. And then in the next verse, it says the occupational activities, that is the day-to-day activities of a man performs according to his own position, are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction to the message of the personality of Godhead. So if it does not lead to bhakti, if it does not lead to God consciousness or Krishna consciousness, then all the activities that is being done is useless. Samayevahi kevalam or Shamayevahi kevalam. So the effort or the endeavor itself is useless. That's what is being told in the Bhagavatam. So like this, we can see that the primary aspect for an individual is to take to Krishna consciousness and then do the activities. And then if those activities are not, like Prabhupada uses the word Krishnized, like everything has to be Krishnized, then only it is our life is successful. And that is what Narada is making the opening remark here. It says that all our actions it has to lead to bhakti, or if it leads to bhakti, or if we are able to see the personality of Godhead, then all our actions are justified. It is like the end justifying the means. But that doesn't mean that you can do whatever we want because we are thinking of Krishna. No, not that way. But in a way that, all our actions have got like purified, in the sense there is this, how do we kind of reconcile this? So there is one nice example that one of the acharyas said. I'll just mention that and then stop. So actually he said that we will have to, like I have a house, I have a family. How do I I'm doing activities to take care of them. How do I bring bhakti into it? So then I think it was the Maharaj was saying that he said, you can do that once you realize the house that you have, it does not belong to you, but it belongs to Krishna. And the family that you have, it doesn't belong to you, but it belongs to Krishna. So you are just a custodian of these two. So you now provide for them, go work, take care of them in that particular mood, then everything becomes spiritualized in one sense. So because you know that it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Krishna, I'm just a custodian. So this change, this internal change that happens is the way forward for all of us. And that is what is being learned or cultured or being an Aryan, where we understand our position and then we continue to do our activities so that we are able to move towards devotional service, move towards the Lord. In fact, one great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he saw the Lord, he says, all his desires are fulfilled. He said, today everything is auspicious because he saw the Lord that day. Today my birthplace and the neighborhood are completely glorified. Today my senses from my eyes down to my toes are fortunate. Today my life is successful because I have been able to see the lotus feet that are worshipped by the goddess of fortune. Because you saw the Lord, everything is glorified. All his senses, everything becomes perfect. And that is what is the meaning of this particular verse, where he says that everything is actually becomes perfect because we are engaging in devotional service. So these are the two verses that we just covered today. And of course, in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, the only way that we can actually get into bhakti is by the Sankirtan Yajna, and that is being highlighted. That I think we all know. I mean, that's the way that we'll have to move forward. But anyway, I'll stop here. It's almost 8:15. Yeah. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak about such qualified devotees of the Lord like Narada Muni and then the Prachetas. So even though I don't have any qualification, but it's made an attempt to bring out certain concepts as told by our Maharaj, by Prabhupada and all that. So if there are any comments or questions, go ahead. Otherwise, thank you so much. Over to you. Hare Krishna. Best pronounced to all.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thanks a lot for the very wonderful class, and you have highlighted very nicely like whom should be called as the Bhagavan, and in the second verse what is the importance of the Ram, and also like you have mentioned like how to Krishnaize our activities, and you have mentioned like for me today takeaway was like if our actions can be justified if it is evoking the devotional service within our heart. And also like you have nicely mentioned very like various references of like related to the Bhagavan and how the devotees are more merciful than Bhagavan by the mercy of the Lord and many other things. Maybe in the interest of the time, like you can take one question, Prabhuji. Like if any devotees have any question, they can ask. Hare Krishna. Lines are already animated. Also, you have given the nice example, Prabhuji, like we have to hold the rope like very strongly so that like by the mercy of the Lord, like we get pulled up. Otherwise, like we cannot simply keep praying and then we don't do any activity. I mean, it's not good. You have given very nice example also.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat.
Prabhu, very well told, Prabhu. It was very neatly narrated. Thank you very much for the wonderful class. Prabhu, I want to have one detail where Indra has been referred to as Bhagavan, Prabhu.
So in fact, this is, in fact, Shiva is referred to as Bhagavan in this thing, when we saw the Daksha's episode, that I know.
Yes.
Indra's case, I just took it because I heard when I was listening to the lectures from this particular thing, there was a mention, and it is fine that they would have been called as Bhagavan in some instance where they have to be glorified for whatever they have done. So that's the point. The takeaway is that, but I'm not able to remember where exactly, or I don't know where exactly. But in the Bhagavatam, it is there. There's a mention.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, there is a comment from Saraswati Mataji. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams. Prabhuji, thanks for instructing to give the credit to others. The Lord is so merciful that He gives credit to His devotees.